Hello, everyone. Today we are looking at Lobotomy Corporation. I love this game, dude. Basically, I just wish someone told me beforehand that this is a Neon Genesis Evangelion simulator. I would have been into it much earlier. And so what this game is, it's just one of those sim management games where you're just managing a bunch of things. And like little rooms, and you have this little layout, and it's all 2D. However, what you were actually managing are these SCP type entities. And so it's this really cool thing where you work for this energy company essentially, called Lobotomy Corporation, and your job is to the slogan rather of the company is "Face the fear, create the future." And so you have to basically find, or somehow these creatures are essentially showing up in this facility, and you have to send agents in to basically interrogate them. And you have 4 different types of interrogations, and based on those interrogations and how successful they are, you get a series of energy boxes. And so those energy boxes are used to power the city or whatever, but also in game they're also used to unlock certain aspects of the enemies, by certain weaknesses, certain data about their behaviors. And you can also use the boxes to make certain weapons, upgrade your staff, also to reveal the actual name of the entities themselves. It's actually pretty interesting that when you get a new entity as you go on through each day, you basically have no idea what it is, and you just have this little poem that gives you this kind of inkling as to what it is, and you usually get a chance of 3 different boxes. So yeah, you can either do attachment, insight, repression, or it's attachment, repression, insight, and instinct, I believe. And so it doesn't really matter, but each kind of entity has a certain type of weakness and a certain type of negotiation that will work on them. And so, of course, the game is structured into different days, and you have to hire, new agents, upgrade agents using your points essentially, and and also attach them, equip them with certain weapons and armor. So sometimes if a entity goes crazy and escapes from its containment, then you have to destroy it and basically send it back. And so again, when you get a new entity, you'll have a question mark over the different types of interrogations that you can do. And so you just have to kind of wing it and go by intuition and instinct and figure out exactly what to do. Also, the amount of energy boxes you get, you can only use it towards that entity. So you have to have a bunch of successful interrogations with that entity in order to use its specific energy boxes against it, in order to understand, its nature and also how it functions. And so you can buy things like, its name, its description, its escape information, how to, contain it. And also you can purchase or unlock different kinds of weapons and armor by upgrading it as well. The other thing that's very interesting about this game is that the entire levels of the facility are named after the Kabbalah and the Tree of Life and the different segments of it. And so the main objective of each day is to get enough energy boxes to meet your quota, and then the workday will be complete, and then you can move on to the next day. Also, you can fully customize all of your little agents and guys, from their hairstyle to their body type and their name. But honestly, when you just hire, your agents die very, very quickly. So usually when you just hire a new agent, you don't really bother, naming them. Also, as you go through the story, essentially you get certain dialogue from Angela, who is the head of the corporation, and it introduces you as the new manager. And then all of your other subordinates are essentially the managers of the different departments of the facility and of the corporation, which again are named after Malkuth, Keter, Bina, and each major Sephiroth of the Tree of Life is named in here. And so again, you kind of spend each day expanding either a new room to the current department, having dialogue with, the characters that represent their respective department. And of course, as you unlock new departments and new rooms every day, you eventually unlock new departments and you unlock new characters and dialogues to have with them. Each character also kind of has a series of little side quests that you need to accomplish. And then once you accomplish all the side quests, you can basically unlock the final mission. I would also note this is an extremely hard game. I have to admit I had to use mods to basically make the game bearable so I would stop dying all the time. But like after, about a dozen playthroughs wiped at roughly the same area, once you get to about I think 4 departments or so, I just could not contain those entities and they would just murder my entire facility. So I just basically turn on invincibility, which says, okay, I just want to get through this because it's a really interesting story. Because at that point, I was about to ready to like throw in the towel and say, okay, this isn't worth it. So yeah, of course, each character has a certain style to them and a character and personality. Malkuth is probably the happiest and the easiest and first department you get. Yesod is kind of a recluse kind of introvert. Gabura is kind of a tactical weapons based badass and part of the security team. And then at the very kind of near the bottom, you have Bina and Chokma, who again are the very kind of mysterious elderly characters who kind of know what's really going on, and talking to them kind of reveals a lot more of the lore of the story, which is really, really interesting. I think Bina especially is very important because she's the one who essentially gives you the answer as to where these entities are actually coming from. That essentially the buckets that you get at the beginning of every new level that reveals a new entity, you can essentially use those to that these buckets somehow go down deep into this well of the human subconscious, and they kind of are able to extract them from the collective unconscious, which again is just very, very cool. So this game is all about kind of really psychological warfare and understanding these entities and these creatures, and also the aspect of the human realm being interfacing with the spiritual psychological realm of the higher worlds. So each department, as you go through them, each of them will have four different rooms, major rooms, and then 3 of them of which are the entities themselves. But the 4th room is always some kind of weird multiplier or some special room. So it can do things like it'll heal your guys, it'll teleport them, it'll transform them or drive them crazy. It will do kind of like weird things. Sometimes it will give them special weapons, and sometimes it'll do other things. And again, the only way you can figure this out is by using them constantly. But the cool thing is that every time you reset your game or die, you keep all the information and boxes of each entity. So that's kind of the incentive of kind of the roguelike nature of this game, so that you kind of keep your progress and don't have to relearn an enemy's weaknesses and movesets every single time. Again, some of these are just very, very abstract and super interesting. Like the very first one you get is 1,001 sins, or no, 1 sin and 100 good deeds. And it's this giant skull with a cross behind it that's on fire. And you're like, okay, so you just got to go, send a guy and talk to this, entity, and you get energy from it. You're like, okay, cool, sure, whatever. Some entities will have multiple weaknesses. Some entities will have almost no weaknesses. Later on in the game, it's very, very difficult. And again, you just have to get used to this whole sort of bureaucratic terminology, how it's being used to describe these supernatural entities. So it's kind of like the X-Files in a way, but it's, again, a lot more like Evangelion. And again, every aspect of the department is named after, the Tree of Life, and each one of those departments essentially has its own kinds of entities within it. And as the game goes on, you can expect to see the same kinds of entities in the same kinds of departments, even though it is semi-random. And so you also get a feel for the entities and how they function, what their personalities are like, what they don't like, and how they are able essentially to escape. And also some of them have some very interesting personalities. And you also know some entities you can't spend too much time with them because they end up transforming and rampaging, and some of them are, just a really interesting thing. Like some of them are just abstract concepts. So some of the entities you encounter are things like a static field. Some of them are, the remains of the ghost of a victim of arson. There's another one that's just a cosmic entity. There's another one that's the ghost or the theme of this orchestra. There's one that's a giant, cosmic, Lovecraftian creature that shouldn't even be contained within a facility. There are things that are, little girls that turn into giant spider monsters and stuff like that. The one that I think absolutely was the most disturbing to me and the most, not annoying, but distracting, was this giant slug roulette thing. It was basically this giant slug with, or this giant slime or something with these giant mouth with teeth. And every time you would interrogate it and it didn't like it, it would start crying like a baby, and then it would lure people into the room and then devour them. And that crying, along with the casino slot machines sound effects, was just really bizarre and disturbing. It was really yeah. Also, for every different department, you have to choose which agents are going to be stationed where, so it's not random. You have to make sure that, usually the higher levels agents are on the newest levels, while newer agents are being trained on the lower levels. And so, yeah, you are just, at the end of the day, you are just a manager. You're just telling people to go and do what work where. But the consequences of you mismanaging the work is that the entire company is filled with demons, and they essentially, overrun the facility and everyone dies. And that happens very easily. Also, as time goes on, there's a higher degree of meltdowns that can occur, as designated by the meter at the top. You can go into the speed options of the game and change how fast you want the gameplay to move and how fast the interrogations go. And I think it's, you can pause the game and totally, rework everything, or you can also put it at half speed and full speed and then double speed. But yeah, there's certain enemies that, again, there's one that's just like a bird creature. The character designs and ending designs in this game are very, very cool. And, if this were any other kind of game where you're just doing a normal management simulator, I wouldn't really care. But it's the context of the game that really makes it super, super interesting. And of course, as you go through the game and unlock new departments, they all fit on the same screen. So it's not like you have to change screens. You still have to manage every single department at once. And so by the end of the game, well, let's see, the Tree of Life is roughly 9 different Sephiroth and 9 times 4. So yeah, at least 36 different things at one time. So by the end of the game, you are just going by almost muscle memory. Okay, click here, click here, click here. This is inside, this is repression. You just keep going through and just trying to get as many energy boxes as you can before the end of the day, and really before one of these high level entities breaks out and destroys the entire facility. And so depending on how your negotiation goes, you'll get a green happy face, a yellow neutral face, or a red bad face. And also, once you kind of conquer certain entities, some of them will actually give you certain things one of them gives you a magic bullet, essentially. And so you're able to use that against another escaped entity and just kind of aim at the screen and shoot it. Along with the entities escaping, if the meltdown is kind of successful, then there are also other entities that just generally spawn into the world, and your agents have to be able to deal with them. There are different ways to make the agents hide in different rooms so they're away from the monsters, but it's almost impossible to save them all once they're unleashed. And of course, there are sub-designations of red, white, black, and other energy types that show you, what your clothing and armor is resistant to, and what kind of weapon is effective against that entity. So if it does escape, it does have also weakness, and there's a whole other, network of, or a whole other system of how these weapons and combat with entities works, essentially. But yeah, pausing the game when you have about 36 different entities on hand is definitely necessary and useful. But yeah, I think probably my favorite part of the game is honestly choosing a new entity, because they just have these really cool, again, this poetry associated with their name, and you just, again, have no idea what they are, and you just kind of have to choose, and it's just based on your gut instinct. And also remembering, as you play the game, pretty consistently, you basically start to remember exactly what these creatures are. And again, once you kind of get the energy cubes and unlock their name, it kind of says it, when they appear in front of you. So it's no longer a mystery. And so as you get fewer and fewer, you actually get really excited to find and unlock new kind of entities that you can handle and discover what they are and what their behaviors and nature and state is. And again, if you fail, you have to go all the way back to the beginning of the game. There's no way to really kind of, do it mid-game or whatever. You kind of have to go to the very beginning. And so, yeah, this game is basically like you're working in like Nerve Central, and you're basically, dealing with these weird angels or, strange divine creatures, essentially. But yeah, this game is basically being like Nerve HQ and dealing with all of these weird angels or divine entities, essentially. It's really cool. Oh, I almost forgot. The best thing about this game, honestly, is the music. The music is such a banger. Even when the entities escape, it feels really, really insane and cool. And and actually my favorite theme is just the normal workday theme, because it has this cool little, thing, whatever that's going on. It just feels really nice. And it's very chill, honestly, and has a really cool vibe to it. But yeah, the music in this game is really, really nifty. But when the entities escape, they play an absolute banger. And it does give you a ton of stress, honestly, because you go into this area where you are like completely think, oh my god, I can't possibly deal with this right now, and the music just creates a ton of stress on top of it. And the music will basically persist until the entity is dealt with and sent back into its containment. Again, some of the entities are like walls of flesh, psychopathic murderers that are wrapped up in straitjackets, essentially. And some of them are just monsters just waiting to like eat you and kill you. And just really, really crazy stuff. Also, the story for this game and exactly why you're doing this is also insane. It turns out there are like multiple versions of a certain character, and you kind of have to find out who is the real one. Another thing that also occurs is that, and so it deals a lot with perception and reality, and a lot of the themes that are actually pretty present in Evangelion, honestly. And the story itself, I need to kind of like, it's been like a couple months since I beat the game, so I don't remember exactly what it was, but essentially what the world is and how it's constructed, and essentially, what is actually going on is really, really intense and interesting. But it still has an essence or a theme of essentially your belief and your mental state is essentially shaping the world. And, the kind of the preamble they give is that the world is divided into two wings and ruled by the eye. And so already there's like some weird supernatural government that's controlling everything, and you're not really being told exactly what is essentially going on. But yeah, the ending to the game is very much based on, Kabbalistic teachings as well. This whole idea that essentially what the Tree of Life is that it's a way to touch or perceive or understand God's light. And so by the end of the game, you essentially have, there are multiple endings, but you essentially choose how to use God's light and how to perceive the world. And so it ends with, of course, the world being completely destroyed, or the world, essentially kind of fading away, or creating this perfect paradise, and a bunch of different endings. However, the official canon ending is essentially that, well, I don't want to give it away, obviously, but essentially leads directly into the sequel of this game, which is Library of Runia. And so it leads to the creation of the library. And so I just like that when a game's ending has this weird esoteric thing and it leads on this weird cliffhanger, but it immediately goes into the next kind of sequel, where if you really want to continue it, you just got to do the next thing. But yeah, I thought it was super, super cool, super high concept, this ending. I really, really enjoyed it. And I really enjoyed a lot of the characters in this game and how they essentially interacted with the player and their own philosophy. And yeah, by the end of the game, everything just gets really crazy and the identities of people start changing. And as you go through the game, the identities of each of the Sephiroth also change as well. And again, it's based on your perception and the ability to believe in something and to perceive something the way you want. And I love that concept. It's super, super cool. So Lobotomy Corporation, very high IQ game, honestly. Very difficult too. I honestly do recommend installing some mods if the game is too difficult. But yeah, I love this game. I'm really glad I played it. It's definitely a classic for me, and an indie game from Korea too. So, I'm very, very happy with this game. Anyway, guys, that's pretty much all I gotta say about this game. I'll see you later. Bye.